My name is Rami, and I'm going to do a short demo of Fidelis Deception. I'm going to start by showing you how to use Fidelis to map your network and understand your terrain. I'll then show you how to deploy deception and how we can alter your terrain using Fidelis Deception by deploying decoys and breadcrumbs inside your network. Finally, I'll go over the attacker activity and show you how it looks like when an attacker trips over deception. So starting with your network, with your environment, this page is the main terrain page, and it shows all of the assets in your network. For each of the assets, we collect the information of what it looks like, and we try to characterize that. We'll know which assets you have, the operating system, their roles, their services, and we'll know the vendors, and we'll know the groups or the domains that they're in. Our goal is to define or understand the real environment, and that's the green in the graph here. And then based on that, deploy the deception, and that's the gray part of the graph. The goal is to have the deception part of the real environment. So when we show you the assets in your terrain, we'll show you the assets page. We'll categorize them by the subnets, by the groups, or by the domains that you have. We can also show you the roles and the vendors. And when we start to deploy deception, we'll start from the subnet page. And that's the easiest way to deploy decoys based on how your network really looks. So when we want to create decoys, for example, for this subnet here, we'll click here to define some decoys in your network. All we have to do is give a valid IP for this. And once we have an IP for the decoy, we can choose which type of decoy we want to generate. It could be an auto-generation of the decoy content based on how your network looks. So if you have a Windows network, it'll deploy Windows decoys. If you have IoTs in your network, it'll deploy matching decoys for that. If you'll have Linux or servers or database servers, we'll deploy the decoy that matches that network best. You can choose to deploy custom decoy content, and here you can choose exactly what type of decoy you want to deploy. Let's say we want a computer of a web server of a specific version, or we can choose an IoT device and decide that we want to deploy a printer of a specific make and version. The third option to deploy decoy is to choose a real OS decoy. This is a decoy that's based on a real full operating system. You can choose out of a few prepackaged operating systems that we have. It's either Windows or Linux based, or you can upload your own image. And then you can supply the OVA file, and we'll deploy a decoy based on that file. So once we click Save here, we'll get a decoy that matches exactly what we chose. And we'll see that decoy, or we'll see all of our decoys on the decoy page here. If we want to go into the details of the decoys, we can get into each of the decoys. We can create additional services. We can change the roles of the decoy. We can configure the ports, or we can change what the decoy will behave like. The next step after we deploy the decoys, we'll deploy the breadcrumbs to match those decoys. The breadcrumbs are traps that we deploy on the real assets in your network that will lead towards the decoys. So depending on what decoys you have on your network, we can deploy the breadcrumbs to match. So for example, for this network here, the decoys that are matching, we'll see them here. And the breadcrumbs are the traps over here. It'll be a PuTTY trap in order to lead to a decoy that has SSH services on it. It'll be an IE trap for a decoy that has a web server on it. The same terminal client, shared folders, or WinSCP. We can create several breadcrumbs and several breadcrumb generators, and then deploy them either manually or automatically on your actual assets. Besides the breadcrumbs and the decoys, there are also advanced type of deception that can be deployed. We won't get into that, but there's network deception and data deception. Network deception is everything that's related to traffic that the decoys generate or listen to inside the network. The goal of the network deception is to fool the attackers and also to catch attempts to do man-in-the-middle attacks. Data deception is altering the data to match your environment by uploading your own custom content. It could be your own custom images, custom web pages, or custom file systems. You can also choose your own authentication method or choose out of the very different authentication methods that we supply. Now, once we have the decoys deployed and the breadcrumbs deployed, basically in your network you have a layer of deception that's waiting for attackers, and making itself, the deception layer is making itself interesting in order for attackers to want to attack that. We collect all the activity from the attacker in the deception activity page. They're separated to alerts and conclusion. Alerts is every small piece of interaction with the decoys. So it could be a SSH session, a login attempt, actual download of file, upload of files. Anything that's happened from the attacker view, from an application level, is registered as an alert. And then on top of that, we have a conclusion that correlates all this information together. So if we look at this conclusion here, a shared folder manipulation, it means that someone accessed the decoy server, the shared folder. You see the asset that accessed over here. We see the decoy server over here. And when we go into the details, we'll see the alerts that this is built of. So the alerts, you have the general information of a login attempt, a successful login attempt. We'll see the shared folders query, and we'll see the request for additional information. We can get into the details. There's a specific alert page, but there's also some initial details that we'll see here about each of the alerts. So anything that's relevant or interesting from the attacker will show here, including the file name, the folder name. If it's a web-based decoy, it'll be the URL, the header, the content. If it's an SSH-based decoy, it'll be the actual commands that are run. Besides the conclusion and the alerts, we also show you the decoys that were accessed and the assets that access the decoys in the network. And we also show you credential access and uploaded files. Credential access is any access to the decoy with credentials. It's monitored and it's collected, so we'll know that this type of user with this type of password accessed. We can click to show the passwords if we want. And we'll see all of the login attempts, the attempt and the successful login attempts, to which services, to which decoys, and who did that. The uploaded file is integration with Fidelis Sandbox. Any file that's uploaded to a decoy, either by shared folders or FTP server or any type of file-based command, is also sent to the sandbox, and it's sent for analysis. And based on that analysis, we'll also give you the report and the ability to download the file. So let's summarize in a few minutes how we map your terrain using Fidelis Deception, how we alter the terrain by adding decoys and adding breadcrumbs in your network, and finally how we catch the attackers and how we monitor the attacker activity using the deception activity. That's all for this time. Thanks for listening.